budget once again. We turn now to an expert in the intricate budgeting process. He is Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He's now president of the American Action Forum, and earlier he served as director of the Congressional Budget Office. So, Doug, thank you so much for being back with us. Let's talk about this budgeting process first. Are we losing something by Congress's inability to come to an agreement on overall budget? Are there friction costs involved?
Oh, there certainly are. You've essentially got the government on autopilot, which means, the priorities of a year ago or how the money is being spent now, the world changes. There's a new administration. There's a chance to change priorities. You have to respond to different events in the world. So there's certainly a loss from not sitting down in advance and getting a fiscal year 22 budget done in time for the fiscal year 22. That should have been done by September 30th. Here we are in February, and we're not close.
How much of this is the sort of even Steven approach, as it were, that if you're going to increase defense a certain amount, you have to increase domestic a certain amount? Does that make sense? I mean, maybe they should both go up exactly the same amount, but maybe not.
That's just politics. They're using these ratios to express their priorities, but this is not something that's written into budgetary stone. It's not even new. I mean, we have failed to make agreements on budgets for a long, long time. When I became CBO director, it was February of 2003, and Congress is doing exactly what they're doing right now, trying to hammer out the budget for the fiscal year they are already in.
So that's, as you say, for fiscal year 2022. You pointed out in one of the things you write regularly for American Action Forum that, in fact, the president owed us the budget for 23 that we don't have as well. What is the significance of not having the president's budget, the administration's view about what its priorities are going forward?
Yeah, the official deadline for the president's budget was Monday, February 7th, the first Monday in February. And the president's budget is much more than just top-line numbers, deficits and revenue and spending. It's a complete statement of the administration's priorities. It says how are we going to fund each agency, who goes up, who goes down, how is that money going to be spent. So you find out about their regulatory priorities. You find out their new initiatives. Is Build Back Better still the president's position, or are they going to pivot to something else? That would be in a president's budget. You find out their view of the economy. What is the administration's economic projections, assuming the president's proposals all get enacted by Congress? That's all really important information about what the administration thinks about its priorities, the world in which it's operating, and how it's going to execute on those plans.
Doug, since you are such an expert on the budgeting process and we have you here, I want to ask you about earmarks, because I understand that part of what might happen with the budgeting process is they bring back earmarks. From your experience up there, would that be a good thing?
The earmarks, I think, are overrated. They have, in fact, officially brought back earmarks. So if they can agree on a budget and get out of this sort of continuing resolution that just keeps spending the money, they can put those earmarks in. That's now okay in the House and the Senate. Now, the promise of earmarks was that it would sort of grease the process. You'd have a way to get members to say, yes, we could get to a deal, get the appropriations bills done on time. There's no evidence that that's happened now that they brought back the earmarks. So they didn't get it done when they had them. They didn't get it done when they didn't have them. Now they have them again. I think all you're going to see is a couple of projects that end up looking a little shaky, and people are going to be getting rid of earmarks one more time.
We have some economic data coming out this week that could be very important. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the projection is that it'll be about 7.3% year over year for the month of January. Where are we in inflation, and do you see a point where it's likely to peak in 2022?
I think there are good reasons to expect there to be some decrease in the inflationary pressure this year. There are really two pieces to this story. One piece is sort of global supply chains and cost shocks. We expect those to moderate as we make progress on the pandemic and as workers get back to work all around the globe, and that's the good news story for 2022. The other part is excessive demand, excessive stimulus last spring. There's still a lot of stimulus in the pipeline. There are households with about $2.5 trillion that they would not otherwise have, prepared to spend it. Businesses are in good shape. State and local governments have lots of money they wouldn't otherwise have. So there's going to be the need for the Fed to really restrain that excessive demand if we're going to get inflation under control.
From the data you've seen, Doug, what should we expect with the supply chain problems that you refer to? When do you think that those will really start to let up?
In the end, the supply chain problems are the pandemic. We have this problem because people cannot be at work around the globe. That shuts down production here and there. It stops transportation at times, and we've seen all this snowball into a real difficulty. But every firm on the planet literally has an incentive to fix their supply chain, and they can modify their behavior, hold more inventory, not count on just in time. That's more expensive, but they will in fact have the parts and the products on hand. And so that's going on all the time. And so I expect the private sector to make great progress. The missing piece is genuine, real progress globally against the coronavirus, and that remains a battle to be fought.
Well, let's go globally, specifically when it comes to the supply chain as well as the coronavirus, and go to China, because I am reading a fair amount now that's expressing some concern about China with their zero-tolerance policy and what that might do actually to the supply chain. How do you assess the risk there?
That's a huge downside risk in my view. The Omicron variant is quite transmissible. We've seen that in the United States, and it's not going to be different in China. Lockdowns don't work, and the zero-tolerance approach will fail. And, from what we've seen of performance on the ground, the Chinese vaccine is not very good. It might not be effective against Omicron very much at all. And if so, you have the entire population at risk of infection. You have the chance for huge production shutdowns in China. We've seen downshifts in China slow global growth. I worry about that this year, and it'll also mangle some of these supply chains people are counting on.
Well, I wanted to pick up on exactly that, what effect it might have on global growth, because China had been such a driver of global growth for so many years. Obviously, the pandemic threw us all for a loop. The United States came back stronger, actually, than China last year. What do we have looking forward to in terms of global growth because of China?
Well, I think we're looking at slower growth, no question. People have marked it down because of the presence of the Omicron variant, but I think a bigger reason to mark it down is the impact of that variant on the Chinese economy. It's going to have a tough year. It's got the fallout of a big housing and commercial real estate overbuilding. They're trying to get that under control. So they're already trying to pull things back. The virus will pull it back even more. So this doesn't look to be a year where China's driving the globe. It looks to be a year when it's pulling it back.
Douglas Holtz-Eakin of the American Action Forum, thank you so much. Always great having you with us.